Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Digital Dialogue series. We are talking cancel culture. My name is Twan Payne, and I'm the founder of the Derby Diversity Business Summit. We have pivoted since March, going weekly, to bring you informative conversations around community, around race, and just current events in general. Today, I've got my co-host with me, Sharina Fox. Sharina, if you want to say hello.
Hello, hello.
We're excited to dive in. And we've got several speakers that are going to be joining us as we dig into cancel culture and why it is so effective. One of our first speakers up is Carmen. Carmen, if you'll tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Carmen Jones. I'm a board member of the Kentucky Alliance, and I'm the founder of the Black Women's Collective here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm certain you have heard the words cancel, if I can get this right today, cancel culture so much. It's becoming extremely prevalent. Some people call it the mob. Some people refer to it as cancel culture. Either way you shake it, it's been extremely effective in how brands decide whether they want to stay the course or whether or not they want to pivot and not be tone deaf to things that are going on. Carmen, in your opinion, what exactly does the cancel culture mean? Why do you think it's been so effective?
I personally don't believe cancel culture is effective, but in my opinion, cancel culture is whenever you have people who make mistakes, people of status who make mistakes, and then their followers, fan base, maybe people who aren't their followers decide to cancel them. I personally don't think it's effective. I think that it's toxic, and I think that it doesn't allow room for failures. It doesn't allow room for you to change. It implies that, excuse my language, that your shit doesn't stink too. You know what I mean? People say things that they don't necessarily mean, and if they do mean it, maybe they end up getting educated behind a certain topic that will allow them to change their mind or their opinion on the stands.
I think that is very interesting, especially for your generation. And that is certainly not the perspective that a lot of your generation has taken. Why do you think you're in a different position on your just ideology around cancel culture in general?
Honestly, I never really thought that. You're right. A lot of people in my generation, they love cancel culture. Once someone is canceled, that's it for them. But I just like to extend people grace. You're not always the same person. I know I'm not the same person from 6 months ago when the protest first started to now. I'm not the same person. So I know that a lot of people who may have said something or done something to accidentally or unknowingly hurt somebody doesn't mean that we should cancel them. Maybe we should just educate them, teach them, because you can't do better till you know better. So,
amen to that. Amen to that. One of the things that I was saying here recently, someone shared that, we don't have conversations anymore. If someone gets upset, the first thing that they do is they go to social media and they have a rant. But the reality is you can't really have anything progress or you can't really be effective if you're not having a two-way dialogue. And so in your, just perspective, when people are taking to social media and they are just laying into someone, what's your opinion on why they took that approach as opposed to either picking up the phone, sending an email? Why do you think they typically take to social media first?
most of the time with cancel culture, it happens with people of status. Like I said, it's harder. I can't send no text message to Beyonce if she's done something to upset me. I can't send an email to Beyonce if she's upset me. So it's easier for me to cancel her and then go drag her in her comments. You know what I mean? I don't think that it's effective. It is a form of communication, but I don't think that it's effective.
Very, very good point. So in your opinion, some of this has come about simply because there are people that are in higher positions that people have access to, and they have become accustomed to reaching them through just lashing out on social media. And so therefore, by happenstance, all of us are just collateral damage because that's now the method in which they go about communicating. Interesting, interesting. I mean, Sharina, what do you make of that? I mean, at the end of the day, she's got a really valid point. But what I'm really impressed with, given the generation that she's in, which might be a generation close to yours, but not everybody has taken on the position that she's taken on. But I think she makes a really valid point.
Well, first of all, I commend you for just being yourself, you know, because I think that takes a lot, especially within today's society. But I'm on the fence when it comes to cancel culture. However, I think I side very strongly with. I think I'm okay with it because I think some companies are old enough to know that wrong is wrong and right is right. But when it comes to somebody taking a stand and saying, "Hey, I don't believe in cancel culture," and being empathetic with the person in charge to say maybe they didn't know, I think that takes like a excuse me a strong I think it takes a strong person. It takes somebody who's okay with just being having their independent, you know, their thoughts the way that they are. And um, I I like that she's taking a stand. I like that she's saying, no, I don't agree with that, and I have my own way of processing this and my own way of the way that I would do it. So um, I think that's really cool for Clemens.
All right, Mr. Aaron Jordan has just joined us. If you'll just introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about you.
Hey everybody, I'm Aaron Jordan. I'm the founder of Black Complex Louisville. Louisville native, born and raised, graduate of Central High School and Tennessee State University, and happy to be here.
Well, welcome. So we're talking cancel culture, and Carmen said she doesn't really subscribe to that ideal. She doesn't feel that taking to social media to speak your voice without having a dialogue is the right way to go about things. Erin, what's your position?
Um, I see two sides of one coin. I I do agree that it's useful when you can go to somebody and have a conversation versus going on social media, if that person is tangible. But council culture in the aspect of holding people accountable, holding companies accountable, holding big names, brands accountable, I think it's dope. I think I love how, like, if Wendy's does something racially insensitive, for example, or if like, for example, when H&M dropped that ad with the little boy that
Oh,
had the
yeah.
monkey situation and how just tone deaf it was and racially insensitive it was, how we as a culture in the community were able to call them out and then counsel them. And the thing I like about council culture is that it's not always a permanent thing. You know, sometimes you get counseled for a particular moment in time, and then you have a chance to come back from. Like, they tried to counsel Rihanna the other day, for her fashion show, which I thought was super dope. But I didn't know, and she brought to my attention. Well, she didn't bring, but my Muslim friends brought to my attention that she had some tone deaf, religious, and culturally insensitive, uh, visuals in her show. Them counseling her to her face, essentially, on social media, allowed her the opportunity, since she happens to be one of the better humans out here, to go back and you know be accountable and say, like, yo, my bad, I didn't know, and this won't come from my brand anymore. Thank y'all for making me aware. So it's like two-sided for me. It's like it's useful, but when it's OD, overdose, when we do too much with it, it can be bad.
Hmm. No, I like that. So being canceled is not permanent,
Mm-mm.
right? So canceling someone is necessarily, I am canceling out on the idea or on the act in which I just experienced that I either don't subscribe to, that I think is biased, that I think is tone deaf, that I think is not inclusive. Um, and so a person has the opportunity to rebound. Huh. I think that's interesting. Carmen, your thoughts on that? Agree, disagree?
Me, I feel like what I've seen from cancel culture, once you're canceled, is done. Like, people really aren't messing with you no more. I feel like with Rihanna's case, she didn't leave it unchecked long enough for her to be fully canceled. And
Mm.
I haven't seen any instance where someone was
Oh,
Um, but if it does, because like I said, I don't think that it's productive to cancel somebody without leaving any room for them to fix their errors. You know what I mean? I personally have never seen nobody, quote unquote, I wouldn't consider what Rihanna did her being canceled. People were upset about it, but she fixed it within 24 hours. I don't think that it was long enough for her to be considered canceled. And H&M, yeah, stuff like that. I do feel like when it comes to like race, if it comes to children and stuff like that, yeah. But I think that like one of my main examples is, y'all know who Daniel Caesar is, the singer. He's a great, awesome singer. He had made some comments maybe a year or two ago. Um, Basically, people called him a white sympathizer. He made comments saying that black people, we need to not be so sensitive and stuff like that. And people canceled him for that. I don't feel like stuff in that instance is cancel worthy. I feel like in that case, somebody in the black community should have reached out to him and be like, no, this is why your community feels like this, instead of just trying to cancel him right off the bat.
Well, everyone, you know who to call if you get canceled, because clearly Carmen doesn't subscribe to just eliminating a person. But I think that there's a lot to be said about that. It goes back to what you mentioned earlier about people are going to make mistakes. People are going to fail. And it's not necessarily always the failure, but it is how you rebound and how you get back up, should you fall. And the reality is that no one's perfect, right? We all make mistakes. Sometimes we're moving so fast in life that there are things that we miss. There are things that we overlook. And so whether or not you're willing to address what you missed or address what you overlooked, I think is extremely, extremely important. I am interested though, Erin, as you mentioned, it's not always permanent, but we also have to hold companies accountable. So is it necessarily wrong to suggest that, hey, maybe the first thing to do is to try to send an email, try to have a phone call first, and then in the event that you're not able to get the sort of response or the sort of outcome that you want at that point, maybe utilizing social media as a last resort?
I mean, if it just depends, because like everybody, it's about perspective. If it depends on how, like, what level of, I guess, like, wrong you are, like if it's something to where even like a big company, AT&T, does something wrong, but it's not like that bad, I don't think that we should be trying to counsel them. Yeah, I think that we should like send emails, call human resources, call customer service, with at least go to the board or whatever, like the little comment board or whatever, the community, different. There are different outlets. I think it's more of like when it's one of those things where you know it in your gut when you see it, you just like, oh no, they tripping. It's one of those things, and then I think it has a lot to do with access too. Like if you don't have access to the person to send an email or have a conversation, those two things for me, counsel them. Get on Instagram, get on Twitter, make them a hashtag at this point.
Well, that's certainly a business imperative for people to not leave their phone number out of their signature line when they're communicating with people. Erin, you have been a major activist. You've been out on the front lines quite a bit in the wake of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. Have you had to utilize social media when you were not able to get in touch with someone to make your voice and your opinion heard?
Honestly, since I've been a part of the movement, and since I've been organizing, I haven't been like saying, for the most part, I'm not gonna say my record's completely clean, but like for the most part, I haven't taken to social media to like express any type of like grievances. Just because I think that social justice is it's a way different space than just like the consumer market space, So I think that for me as a man, um, I want to be more conscious and more tactful in my approach in this space, and not even just a man, but just as a good human. I mean, that my gender has little to do with just being a noble human. I think in social justice space, there's a different way that we try to, I guess, handle each other, embrace each other, whatever, however you want to put it. So no, I haven't. I ain't been counseling nobody, not in the movement at least, or not during the movement at least.
Mm. And Sharita, I'm really curious. So in listening to both Carmen and Aaron, it really puts things into another perspective for me, right? Because access matters. And so if you cannot get in touch with someone and there is a grievance that needs to be made, I can certainly see where social media might be a last resort. I am curious, though, just in your opinion, um, how does a person rebound? Okay, so you've been canceled, right? I will tell you this: I don't think that Amy Cooper can rebound. I mean, I can be wrong, okay, but I am like, whoever, if ever, someone is able to help Amy Cooper rebound from that, um, good Lord, they might need to run for president. Because that went so viral so fast, and there were just so many no's. There were just so many no's to that situation. But can a person rebound from being canceled?
I think you can rebound from being canceled. I think it's about the way you rebound, what steps you're taking, because being canceled is such a public display of cancellation. I think it's vital that you publicly do the work, that you're taking the steps publicly and saying, okay, I was wrong, taking responsibility, number one. I think taking responsibility can go a long way, and that's with anything we do in life. Just saying, "Hey, I was wrong here. I wasn't knowledgeable on the subject." Even if it's something that might be racially insensitive, to say like, I was being racially insensitive. I apologize to the people that I hurt in this excuse me, in this process. So to do that first, acknowledge that you're wrong, can take the proper steps, partner with people in organizations. I think that if you're on that level, that say, like, no, I didn't mean that by that, because I do think that sometimes that because people are not a part of certain communities, that you do sometimes make wrong decisions, whether it be a statement or anything. Sometimes you just make wrong decisions just because. And to just be able to say, hey, I'm doing the work. That is not who I am. That is not who my brand is. That is not the culture that I am cultivating at my company. I would never want to make any of my employees or even family, because a lot of us now come from family of multiple ethnicities, races, cultures, whatever. And just to say, I don't ever mean to make anybody feel that way. To do that on a public a public platform, and that public platform might look like just taking back your social media, and just saying, hey, this is not me, and I just want to apologize. And I think because social media is the quickest way to cancel somebody, it is also one of the quickest ways to make a public apology.
I would agree. Carmen, given your position, what are some things that you think, it's the access piece, I keep coming back to that. And I'm certain that many companies have thought about this. You have the contact us page, you have their social media inbox, but perhaps there needs to be a page designated to people that are on the verge of canceling them, that allows them to immediately have all hands on deck before it even gets to social media. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me. Are there any other ideas or just thoughts that you have for a corporation, an organization that may come under fire for a number of different reasons?
I don't
right?
think that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't think that there was them little contact us pages and stuff like that. Okay, just because for me starting this new organization and stuff like that, it's hard to keep up with every single person who emails us. It's hard to keep up with every single person who DMs us. It is hard to keep up with every single who inboxes us. So if you take a big company like H&M, they're going to take forever to get back to. Honestly, with H&M, I feel like that's a great example of someone who should be canceled and stay canceled, because when you have big name companies like this, reteaching what racism is to white people is not our job. And as Black people, we make one little mistake, we're gone. When it comes to the white world, they don't take no time to cancel Black people for whatever little mistake that we do. H&M is 2020. Y'all knew what y'all did was racist. Y'all knew that there's caricatures made up like that, stuff like that. I don't feel like it doesn't matter if you have a contact us page. We're past words when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, you actively know what you're doing is wrong. That's not the first time that someone has been canceled for um, making things like that. There's been fashion shows with the same exact stuff in it. You know what I mean? H&M ever did what they did. A lot of these companies, they know what they do is wrong, but they choose to do it anyways. So an instance like that, that's okay to stay canceled. But like for a person who can actually has reach, I don't really think it's okay to do that. Big companies know like you have to pay for hurting people in some way, and most of that way is monetarily.
Mm. Hmm. You said something else that's really profound there, Carmen, that Black people have been canceled for less. So therefore, why should we give others more of an opportunity than what has been afforded to us? I wonder if cancel culture is also a derivative of that, right? Kind of like, this is what I've experienced, and so therefore, this is now what you're getting back from my experience. So that's something I'm gonna have to do some research on. I think that is quite intriguing to me. So we don't think that we should give an organization, or that an organization should provide an outlet. Now I will tell you this: I will never forget where I was the day that I saw the article about H&M. There are some things in life that you will never forget. It's like, I'll never forget where I was when I received the news that Michael Jackson had passed away. The ad with H&M was so disturbing that I remember literally reading it, looking out of my dining room window, so perplexed that how can we be in 2020 and you not realize that putting the word jungle and monkey on a young Black boy would not have gone viral, right? Like, how did that happen? And more so, this, not necessarily the individual who placed the ad, right? But the corporation itself, not to have enough diversity hired within that department to have caught that before it was approved. Because even in my small business, every single thing goes through some sort of chain of command or some sort of approval before it's released. So I can only imagine in these massive organizations that there is a chain of command and a chain of approvals. And how many eyes looked at that ad before it was released that approved every no known to man? How does that happen, right? So I'm always looking for, how do we bring a solution to the issue? And so outside of taking to social media, are there any other things that we would like to see? And if there's nothing, that's okay too. But are there any other things that we would like to see, or steps that we would like corporate America to take that allows us to share our grievances or to share our concerns without having to wait 30 days, 45 days, or 60 days for you to finally see our email for us to get back to you? And then the question is whether or not corporate America is willing to make the investment.
Well, I mean, you and Carmen literally took both of the thoughts right up out of my head. Like, when Carmen says, like, at some point, you don't even deserve to redeem yourself. I agree. Like, sometimes, like, it's over with. Like, it's you already did the damage. Now you have to lay in the bed that you just made for yourself. But then, to your point, that's literally what I was thinking also, was like, that's the solution. If you have inclusivity, if you have people that are from these communities at these tables, then the chances of you being offensive to some culture or some religion or practice or something out there, those chances are slimmer, because now there are people at the table that can say, in the board meeting, in the marketing meeting, yo, that offended me. And I know people who look like me or who come from a place that I come from or who worship like me, that's going to offend them too. So how about we go back to the drawing board and we decide for another campaign? Like, that's not
I
it.
don't know, Aaron.
And,
I may have to push back on that because we're experiencing that right in our state. I mean, we have a Black man that's in the position of whether or not, justice went a certain way for Rihanna. I know it's a little provocative, but is it that simple?
well, to be fair, he don't come from where we come from, though. If we're
Mm.
looking at his real track record, he's not. I'm from, for lack of a better phrase, I'm from the streets of Louisville. So my matriculation into the man that I am now is way different than Daniel Cameron's. He went through, from what I know, traditional programs. He was, had access. This isn't new on his trajectory at all. So when I say people who come from where we come from, I literally mean like people who come from, just because you, and I mean that's something to be, that's a whole nother discussion about, like,
No,
all skin folk not being
I want to
kinfolk.
dive
But
into it because what you're
yeah.
explaining is so critical, and it's critical for America in general to
Mhm.
understand that diversity is not just the color of someone's skin. It is not just their gender. It's not just their sexual orientation. It is not just their social economic status. It is also diversity of thought and lived experience. And those of us that have what I call experience with the hard knocks, that know what the alternatives are in certain communities. When you mention, from the streets, some of those that have street sense, right, are going to approach things very differently. And the question is corporate America ready? Is corporate America ready to acknowledge that they are missing Black America with street sense in some of the most key departments and areas within their organization? And I see it every single time I've heard a story about a young Black man or a minority who lived on the streets, or not on the streets, but had a street sense, but couldn't get the same opportunities afforded to them. So they took a different path that ended up landing them incarcerated. But they had a lot of the same gifts, the ability to add, math, hustle, negotiate, right? And so, but because they were kept out, of the boardroom, they had to take to the block, right? So is corporate America ready to acknowledge that they need that sort of diversity within their organization? I think that's something that's definitely worth being talked about, because I think so often you can take a young man or female, for that matter, who may be a little more rough around the edges, and they're not comfortable with that. And so therefore, they're missing out on a whole segment of our community that can bring and add a lot of value into key positions within their organizations.
So I'm going to chime in here. I will say that I think that there are certain companies who are ready, but I don't think that corporate America as a whole is ready. And the reason I say that is because they do a really good job of not of hiring diverse talent from a small pool in which they have, they know that there's only going to be a few of us or any other in that pool of people. When you get somebody like Daniel Cameron, that you choose to be in a position as he is, he does not come from a front, like we just said, like he doesn't come from the background that he doesn't come from the streets. He doesn't come from any of that. But for the people who chose him, it's like, oh, well, we did choose a Black man. But you also chose the one Black man that also was amongst a huge group of white people and who has always been amongst a group of white people. So it's almost like he's the token Black guy within all of his circles. And I think it's not fair that Black people have to be the token to be chosen when there's so many HBCU grads who deserve those opportunities. There's so many, Black people at other universities or trade schools or whatever that deserve those same opportunities, and not just Black people, right? Just like anybody, Hispanic, Latino, whatever. And I don't think that corporate America, I think corporate America has again, time and time again, shown us that they are not ready to really dive into diversity because they continue to go to places that are not diverse to choose talent.
You know, for those that are just tuning in, one on social media, we do have a whole nother audience that's backstage on Hopin. I hope that you will join them there as well and keep this dialogue going. We are discussing cancel culture. And as we've evolved in the conversation, we are now on the difference between being more streetwise and well versed on different parts of the Black community versus those that have not. And I want to sit on this topic here for just a moment because I was that young girl whose mother moved her out of the inner city at a very, very early age into white culture, and I experienced growing up in it. And there's going to be a panel that I'm going to be on next week, and it's titled It Starts at Home. And I think it's really important to share this. Just because you are Black does not exclude you from doing the work. You know, it is so easy to grow up and say, well, I don't know this and I don't know that because of where I grew up and where I lived. And so therefore, I wasn't educated on this or I wasn't educated on that. But none of us are void from having to do the work. By virtue of me having a really rough time, once I hit a certain age and the schools were now more diverse because of a program called the Urban Suburban Program, where the inner city kids at a certain age were bused to middle school. I was forced into having to establish relationships. And when you don't identify with people culturally, it becomes very uncomfortable very fast. And so I began to rebel and I really struggled with my identity because here I had grown up knowing one thing, but now I'm looking at people that look like me and I'm wanting to partake, and it was not very easy. But as I began to navigate and I decided that I wanted to learn more about where I came from, what my culture represented, I had to do the work. And so I think it's really important for the Black community in general, because this is not we're not coming to cancel you because you may have grown up as the only Black. I've been there. But I also think that it's equally as important when you have not grown up in your own culture to explore and to understand, because otherwise it'll be very difficult for you to have certain conversations, establish certain relationships, and to understand someone that looks like you. But this is intriguing on the part of corporate America, especially when you're talking about real diversity. Corporate America, are you only comfortable with a certain type of Black professional? And are you open to being truly diverse and looking for those that have all sorts of thought and all sorts of walks of life to bring into your organization? Because I will tell you, I know a lot of people that their street sense is on 10. And if they took that same expertise into your boardrooms, and there are stories of where you have men and women who have killed it in the sales departments, in the marketing departments, in the creative spaces, but will you allow yourself to be uncomfortable so that you can have them in your mix? I want to bring Carmen back with us. I know that she had popped off there just a second. And Carmen, I'm not certain how much of what we've been talking about that you were able to capture or not. But we are still on the conversation of true diversity of thought, you know, especially as it relates to, I'm thinking the boardroom cancel culture. And I don't even know if you really want to call it cancel, because they don't even give you the opportunity to be canceled because you're not at the table. But I think that they're missing out on a whole lot of value by not having our brothers and our sisters who have that knowledge and who have that expertise in the room. Aaron, before I jump over to Carmen, because I know this was brought up by you, are there any just thoughts or comments that you want to share as it relates to that?
First, I want to read this person's comment. Lakeisha Morris says on Facebook, that's a great point. It's not enough to say, she quotes, that has been my experience. We must be sensitive to the experiences and realities of our brothers and sisters. I think I don't have the experience of being out of touch with I guess like the more like rugged experience within the Black experience. But I will say I have been I have been in positions in the past where I've had to like kind of tone down who I was authentically to try to make people around me feel comfortable. But it was mostly when I went to TSU. I mean, I have the benefit, I guess it's a Black privilege that I went to a Black high school and a Black university. And then after my Black university, I moved to a Black city, which was Atlanta. So, I mean, I have the Black privilege of being in spaces. I don't even know if it's a privilege because I mean, I intentionally took myself to these spaces, but just being in spaces where I was welcomed and embraced as my organic self has been the majority of my adult experience. So I think that I think there are though a lot of Black people that not only do they not do the work of understanding the diaspora of our Blackness, they don't even care.
Mm.
Like it's not even relevant. Like you have Black people that feel like they made it to a certain level. It's almost like a horse with the blinders on kind of thing. Like they're just focused on their thing. And I get it. Like we get focused in life on our thing. But I think that as Black people, we have a unique position in the world. Um, and that position is, more so than most other cultures, we have a responsibility um, with our humanity to make sure that our entire culture is uh, accounted for. That we all are getting some type of level of um, success and fulfillment and joy and happiness in life. And like I said about the unique position, it's because there have been so many systems put in place to make sure that that wasn't our reality. So to your point about, some people thinking just because they're Black, they don't have to do the work. That's not true. I think that, I mean, it's unfortunate that we have to do the work, but the work has to be done. I don't think that it's for us to do alone. But
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm a prime example of that because there was a lot that I didn't understand. There was a lot that I didn't know. And I'm talking about that crash course came crashing down pretty fast. And then on top of that, not only was there a lot that I didn't know, I'm continuing to learn, right? I'm continuing to make correlations. I'm continuing to have these aha moments because this work is never done. It becomes more and more complex even within our own communities as it relates to the LGBTQIA, right? And how that impacts the Black community. And when we say Black Lives Matter, well, does all Black lives matter, right? So there's a lot that we have to continually be educating ourselves on. But like I tell people all the time, it to me really boils down to you can have your ideals, but that does not mean that your ideals mean that you have to hate someone or hurt someone in order for you to stay true to what you believe. And I think that that is the biggest misconception that a lot of people hold. They feel as though they have to act out or force their ideals on someone else because of someone else's choice in life. And that's just not the case, which is why I have a very, very high level of respect for what Carmen shared, in that, I think there is a better way. And I think dialogue is just so key. Aaron, we've seen the result of true dialogue and how quickly things can become a misunderstanding just this past week. For those that are watching, Aaron had a great idea. Hey, I'm tired of looking at the boards. And is there something more positive that we can do with these boards? And by him having that idea and posting on Facebook, some other people got excited and wanted to participate. And then a few days later, someone else said, hey, we're tired of the boards. Let's take them down. And right in the middle of those that are mobilizing to do something positive with the boards, you had some that thought, you know what, we want to do something positive by demonstrating trust to take the boards down. That could have been a collision. It could have been someone taking to social media and canceling out an organization or a person as opposed to saying, hey, let's pick up the phone and have a conversation. And that dialogue resulted into collaboration, community-wide collaboration. And I think there's a lot of missed opportunities that many have because the emotions get the best of us. Now, I'm not saying that if you make the effort and you are shut down or you are ignored, that you are not well within your rights to speak up. But if you have not given or extended an invite for a conversation to be held, I don't know that the first thing that you want to do is to immediately cancel someone, because you really could have canceled your vision from truly coming into fruition while you think that you're canceling them. So at any rate, Sharina, I know I've said just a mouthful there, and I saw a few nods from you, and I'm certain, it's just kind of navigating the D&I space in general, watching the different generations and how they interact, social media, via email. Have you seen where you feel as though some people have just really kind of jumped out there a little too quick and may have just, if they had just held on one more day, picked up the phone, had a conversation, that things could have just had a totally different ending?
I think I see that often. I really enjoy being a part of this generation right here. We've we might be quick to cancel people, but I think that we are wanting a lot more conversation than, and we're open to a lot more conversation than people have ever been open to. But we're also pushing the envelope when it comes to like, hey, I would like to have a conversation with you. Hey, no, a conversation needs to be had. And so I think that our generation is doing a very good job of like putting our foot down and saying like, no, we're not going to accept this anymore. There will be a conversation, and whether now I will say that sometimes both parties are not good at taking the information in which they get in the conversation well, right? I think everybody has to do a better job of not just flying off the handle. But I think that we are doing a better job than we've ever done before at that. So I think a lot more conversations are being had. And I think a lot of bridges are being built. I know this is not an idea time for anybody. 2020 was supposed to be everybody's year. And here we are. I mean, honestly, 2020 has been a gift and a curse in that, right? Because it's made us sit down. It's made us have these talks. It should not have taken lives being lost in order for us to get here to these moments. But like, we are really pushing. Like, we are really, like, 2021 has to be everybody's year because of how deep we all had to get and sit with ourselves in 2020. So I think that, like I said, a lot of bridges between like cultural, racial. I mean, now we are, we're in the streets and we're seeing people who we call allies, right? Before 2020, I don't know that we thought about that together, right? Nobody was saying, "Hey, I'm an ally." So I think that took things to happen, conversations to be had, and I think that we're on the path in the right direction. But there's still more conversation that needs to be had. But we're doing a really good job.
I do want to share. Miss Shanda Hand also shared a little bit ago that corporate America is not ready. They are not ready. And I think that begs a big question. What have they been ready for from other cultures that they have not been willing to be ready for from the Black culture? And why is that? And what are we going to do about it? We're certainly not going to solve that today, but it's definitely something that I want to dive into here in the future. And I have found myself having this conversation more often than not with many people that feel as though that is another gap as it relates to just equity across the board. And who are the right people to begin to usher that in? Because if you have a person that has amazing street sense and they have a great business acumen, what is the barrier? What is the fear of bringing them in and giving them an opportunity? And should you bring them in and give them that opportunity, what exactly does that look like? For those that are tuning in, we've talked about a few examples of cancel culture. One is with H&M. For those of you that recall, the child that they placed a t-shirt on, I believe it was Wildest Monkey in the Jungle, was on the worn by a young black boy in an ad, and it sent Black America and some white America into an absolute tailspin. And then also, Aaron touched on here just recently with Rihanna, and the difference between the two is Rihanna immediately came out and began to address it, whereas H&M trying to get through to anyone or any sort of response to be able to um, explain how you were feeling or your grievance just really went unheard. We also discussed the difference between having access to those that you're able to voice your opinion, your concerns to, and not having access, and how that lack of access has really evolved into how cancel culture has been perpetuated. Because oftentimes, if a person has something they want to say or they want to speak their mind and they cannot reach you, their next step, the last resort, is them going on to social media. And so, I look at it in a lot of different ways. I think that there are some people that is the only avenue that they take. Having a dialogue with someone is just not something that they prefer to do. And I wonder if some of it might be that it's simply because they're uncomfortable with the idea of having the conversation. And so, how do we prepare more people, Erin? How do we get more people prepared and more comfortable to stop and actually pick up the phone and let someone know, hey, I'm offended, or hey, you hurt my feelings, or hey, I disagree with this? How can we equip people to stop and pause before taking to social media so that they can begin to become more comfortable with having a two-way exchange of dialogue?
Are we talking about social media or real life?
Well, we want to keep them from going to social media, right? So how do we get
So I
them
guess we're talking
to
about
pick up the phone? How can we, for those that are not comfortable, what are some ways in which we can get them to take an alternative route to voicing their opinions, their concerns, before inviting the entire world into how they're feeling?
okay. Before I answer that, I want to just scoot back 2 steps, and then I'm gonna. So when we talk about America, America was started as what? A corporation, essentially. So you had posed the question, why is it so uncomfortable for people to come in, or why is it so uncomfortable for people to allow inclusivity? And I think that it's because, I mean, this country was not founded on inclusivity. So, and then you were asking also, like, why is it that, people are more willing to be accepting of other cultures versus Black culture? I think the answer is just blatantly in front of our face, that we possess uh, a certain ambience and a certain power and stature about ourselves, to where it's interpreted as aggression to some people. And I think that a lot of other cultures have been more so willing than our culture to be more docile in some respects. When you look at how other cultures engage and interact with each other, and especially in America, just being real, like, a lot of people, and Black people have done it too, but I think the other cultures really have done it, like trying to assimilate and like like appease to white culture, not look threatening. And like, I have Asian friends, I have friends from Mongolia and different places from around the world who tell me, like, their parents have told them, like, stay away from Black people, get in good with the white folks, get to the money, mind your business, that kind of thing. Like, that's like kitchen table talk. So to fast forward to the question of, what can we be doing so that we don't have to go to social media? I think that, one, Black people specifically, and other oppressed groups or people who don't feel like they have the access, need to feel like their voice is, one, going to be heard and validated. Because if I felt like my voice was going to be heard and validated, and if I understood my voice would be heard and validated, there would be no reason for me to get online and counsel you. There would be no reason to have a huge viral hysteria about your insensitivity to my, you know, the food that my culture loves to indulge in, because I know that if I call and or send an email or use whatever line of communication, it's going to be considered and acted upon. So I think that's like the missing piece right there, is the fact that people don't even think that they will be heard.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. Well, it is 2:56. This hour has flown absolutely by. Um, any final comments before we wrap up? Any from you, Sharina? Final comments, final words?
Oh, I had a final word, but I was
Oh,
going
I'm
to let her
sorry. Go
speak.
ahead, Aaron.
I was going to let her speak first, though.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I think this has been a great conversation for both sides of cancel culture. I also think that it proves the amount of work that has been done and that needs to still be done. But it also proves that, like, you know, we've crossed a lot of bridges here, and the fact that we're still moving forward and being unapologetically Black, I think goes a long way to make people. You don't want people to feel uncomfortable, but being unapologetically Black, for so many people doing that in this moment, I think it does help to push things forward and say, like, this is just Black culture. This is what it's been. This is what has made a lot of money for corporate America, because we move. If anything, anybody knows anything, we make movements move. And so for us to have these conversations out loud now, and for us to just be like, no, this is the way I'm wearing my hair to work.
To
You
work.
are going to learn how to converse with me. You're going to learn how to, you know, speak my language. You know, like, do everything that we've been doing. I think is definitely pushing us forward. And like I said, continuing to be unapologetically Black will eventually go a long way in helping companies to say, well, we got some unapologetically Black people here in the building today, and we're gonna have to start respecting that.
I tell you what, that's one of my dear friend, Nikki Lanier. She always says, I am going to be unapologetically Black right now. And I adore that, because the reality is that we shouldn't have to apologize for our culture, because we don't ask other people to apologize for their culture. And I think the awakening of culture in general, and how culture is viewed and how culture is embraced, and the more that people begin to realize, oh, that is Black culture, that's not bad. This is white culture, that's not bad. Unless it is bad, right? The more that we understand cultural differences, the less that we will judge based on in person and their action, so much as that is just their culture. That is how they interact. That is how they express themselves. Um, but yeah, I would definitely say this has been a fruitful conversation. It's 2:59, Aaron. I'll let you have the final comment before we wrap.
Um, I think that as it pertains to council culture, do what you got to do. If somebody ain't acting right, call them on it, hold them accountable, and if they hold themselves accountable in return, then there we have more fruitful conversation.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you, Sharina. And
Thank
thank
you.
you to those that did join us in earlier. It is now 3 o'clock, so you all know the drill. It is time for networking. For those that are backstage right now, on the left side of your screen, you will see a live button letting you know that networking is now live. When networking is live, you click that button, it'll take you to a screen where you are one on one with another individual. Simply click ready. You'll have 3 minutes or less to introduce yourself, learn more about the other individual, and should you want to stay in contact with them, simply hit the ready or connect button at the top of your screen. And when you hit connect, they will show up in your dashboard. Think of them as like business cards if you're out at a networking event or a trade show. I appreciate you all spending time with us today. We've learned a lot as it relates to cancel culture. For those organizations where you are not easily accessible or take too long to get back to those that have grievances or concerns that they'd like to address, 9 times out of 10, they are going to resort to social media. So if there are other ways in which you'd like for them to get in touch with you, we highly recommend that you publish that on your websites. For those that have said, I'm going to cancel you, don't take it so hard. It might just be a temporary thing. Some of us believe that you can bounce back. Thank you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you here, same time, same place, next week for Candid Conversations with the DDBS Digital Dialogue. Thanks so much for tuning in.